So welcome everybody. I'm here with Mel Robbins. Mel is one of the top motivational speakers in America. She's so awesome. She's been on CNN, a legal contributor of CNN and HLN, a syndicated talk radio personality, and also CEO of Mel Robbins Enterprises, LLC. I had the pleasure of seeing Mel speak live. She's incredible. She's hilarious. She's bold as hell. Not afraid to say anything. She's been on a ton of TV shows and made a ton of appearances besides CNN and HLN. She's also been a legal expert and relationship expert on Dr. Phil, Fox News, Anderson Cooper, Piers Morgan, Good Morning America, so many to read, Dr. Drew, The Today Show, CNBC, The Talk, Oprah, and Fox Business. It's amazing. She has a new mission now that I'd love for you to just say a tidbit about so we can know about the 45, which sounds incredible. And also, she has been on TED Talk, so shared the stage with Barbara Walters and Donald Trump. So the list goes on. I am honored and privileged to have you on this interview, and I'm really curious to know about your background, kind of how you became so successful, and then I'm going to delve into the parent side and maybe how they influenced you. So can you give me a little bit of that?
So where do you want to start from?
Start with your background, just how you got to where you are today, and then we'll go back in time to your parents.
Well, I think it's actually a really cool story because it relates to probably your experience and everybody's experience. So the research now shows that the average American is going to change his or her job 13 different times in their career, and I think I've done that lap twice now with 26. But the long and the short of it is I grew up in a small town in western Michigan. I ended up going east to Dartmouth College. Then I went to Boston College Law School. And in the beginning of my career, I was a public defender doing violent felony criminal defense work in the city of Manhattan. And I did that for 3.5 years. I loved it. And then my husband got into a business school. And as so many of us find, life changes of your partner put career changes into your life. So we moved to Boston, and the only folks that would hire me, because I wasn't licensed to practice in Massachusetts, was a large law firm. Hated it. Like, it was the kind of job that when you worked, and we all had this, you wake up in the morning and you just wish that you had mono, that you did not have to get out of bed, that you did not have to go to that job. So I suffered through this job that I hated for about 18 months because, look, we had obligations that we had to pay, and that's what you do in life. And the good news is I got pregnant and I had a maternity leave, and on my maternity leave I had severe postpartum depression that had me get very much in touch with myself, and I turned to Chris and said, that's it. I don't ever want to answer the question, what do you do for a living, with I'm an attorney. So I had a problem on my hands. And the problem was we had bills to pay, and I had a brand new baby, and I also knew I didn't want to just stay home, and I had to find a job. So I networked, and I ended up getting lucky. I jumped into a startup in Boston, and it was easy in 1999 to get into the technology business here because everybody seemed to be launching a company. It was the big tech bubble. And I spent 3 years at a .com, and then that company moved, found myself having another problem, had to figure out what to do. So I hired a coach, somebody like Robyn, somebody like myself, to help me figure it out. And this coach worked with me for about 3 weeks and then said, Mel, you should be coaching. You just have a knack for it. And I'm like, well, I don't know how. She said, I'll train you. So I worked with this coach for a number of months. She trained me in coaching, and I tapped my legal and my business acumen and experience and my love of helping people and my no-holds-barred approach, and I launched a business. So I had a coaching business working with Johnson & Johnson and Wells Fargo and Fidelity and just a ton of companies. And my specialty was taking people who were great individual contributors that were then promoted to run a division. And when you go from having to just manage accounts or just bring in business to all of a sudden running a team, it's a totally different ballgame. So I would go in and work with you for a couple months to help you figure out what you needed to change about your attitude, about your work balance, about how you worked in order to be successful at doing both. And then a funny thing happened. What was it called? Inc. magazine wrote an article about my business. Wow. But this is an interesting story. So I went so here I am, a small businesswoman, right?
Yeah.
And you constantly have to be doing business development. And so I went to an Oprah Winfrey convention about 6 years ago. I think it was called like Live Your Best Life, something like that. And I went there to network because I figured here you got thousands of women showing up that want to change their lives. What a better place to prospect for coaching clients than at this conference.
Yeah.
So I show up at the conference. I go into one of the sessions, and this woman who's a best-selling author walks on stage. Her name is Martha Beck, and she started to talk. And you've had this experience in your life, I'm sure. As she was talking, I immediately was not listening.
Yeah.
I was saying to myself, holy shit, I want to be doing what she's doing.
Right. Yep.
I want to be talking to a bigger crowd. I want to write books. I want to write a magazine article. I want to have a bigger impact.
Yes.
Now, mind you, I had no idea how to do it.
Right.
Truly. I had never been on television. I hadn't written a book. I hadn't ever given a speech. The last time I had been up in front of a crowd talking was when I was a trial lawyer. I just knew in my gut that was something that I wanted to do. So I invented this little trick called, what would Martha Beck do? Because I knew what Mel Robbins would do.
Yeah.
But given any situation that came across my desk, I would ask myself, well, what would Martha Beck do? If I just kind of pretend that I think like her, maybe I'll slowly become her. And so a funny thing happened, and I'm telling this story for a reason because I think you'll see that there are probably moments in your life where this very thing is going to happen, but you're not thinking, what would Martha Beck do?
Right.
So I'm sitting at my office, at my house, and I am 38 weeks pregnant. I'm tired. It's 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
And I can't sleep because my son was sitting like right on my cervix. And so I'm sitting there, and this email comes across my inbox. Now, the email was from a friend of mine in New York City, and she wrote something like, thought of you. And I looked down on the email, and the original email was from an Inc. magazine reporter. And I looked at the date, and the date was from a month ago. So this sucker was like 30 days old. And the subject line said, looking to interview coaches for an article. And then I read down, and she describes the kind of coach she wants to talk to. I wasn't certified. I didn't have the kind of clients she was looking for. I wasn't based in New York City. Like on and on and on. Not a match. What would Mel Robbins do? She would hit delete. What would Martha Beck do? She'd say, what the fuck? Why not, right? And she would, and so I was like, okay, what the hell? So I typed this like off the cuff thing, send. The next morning, the woman calls me. We spend 2 hours on the phone. She rewrites the entire article to be about my business, and then the thing gets published. And so here I think this is going to be amazing because it's going to lead to all kinds of clients and la 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 la. I didn't get a single client from that article. Instead, what happened is somebody at CNBC saw it, and they called me. And they said, we're thinking about doing a show about coaching, and you're perfect. Will you come down and tape something with us? And I thought, what would Mel Robbins do? Mel Robbins would have probably said, what? I've never done what? What would Martha Beck do? She'd say, sure. So I went down, and that, honest to goodness, that one moment in that seminar that had me have my gut say, that's what I want. And then that one moment at my laptop, when that email came by and I stopped the way I normally think and I thought in the frame that the person that I wanted to be more like thinks, led to my media career. That's what led to it. It was that article in Inc. magazine. And so I went to CNBC, and that just led to a crazy set of circumstances where I just said yes all the time. Yeah, you want me to do a call-in radio show on Sirius with no training, no support, for no money, for free? I'd love to. Or, oh, you want me to fly down here like once a week? You're not going to pay me anything, but I get to appear somewhere and feel fancy? I'd love to. And so for a year, I got to dabble in the media, and I also continued to coach and to speak. And at the end of the year, I decided I'm going to make this media thing go for real. And it's been an interesting ride. I've been very lucky. I have been under development with ABC that led to almost nothing happening. I shot a huge television show with the Fox network called Someone's Gotta Go, where I was firing people on national television for real jobs. Horrible show that luckily never aired. I shot Monster-in-Laws for 2 seasons with A&E. I have been a contributor to CNN covering the George Zimmerman trial. And you know what's interesting about this whole thing is that I've had the gift of having a ton of experiences because I would just say yes. And I think that there's a lot to be learned, that when you're open to trying things, you gain all this experience that ultimately in the end tells you what you want to do. And so here we are, Robyn, talking. And after 5 years of being in the media business, at times very successful, at times extremely frustrated, not getting paid, I have realized that what I love more than anything is having control over my life and making a difference with people. And I've come to the conclusion that what I really want to focus on for the next, I don't know how many number of years, is delivering speeches that change people's lives and delivering content to people that make their day and their careers better. So that's a lot. That's a mouthful.
That
I'm sorry.
was awesome. Well, now everybody's going to start thinking, what would Mel Robbins do? What would Mel Robbins do? So you've really progressed here. Now I have a mantra in my head.
Yes.
So that's great. Thank you for that. That's really nice to know your background. Cool. So, well, I'm very curious about, a lot of people could have had those same circumstances and not taken that route and not said yes and then let their fear stop them. And that's a lot about your book, which I didn't mention, Stop Saying You're Fine. But in regards to, I'm curious about the financial side. Obviously, what comes with success oftentimes comes money. So I'm curious about your parents and how, what was it that was either said or unsaid that they taught you in regards to money, success, or finances?
It's a great question. So my parents have a interesting story, and I'll start by answering the question, which is, I have this philosophy around money, which is, if you need it, I'll find it. And that's probably not the most powerful thing. And as I've been listening to you, Robyn, I'm realizing, so that's why my bank account isn't huge, because my entire thought process about it is not about stockpiling money. It's all about feeling as though it's never a problem and that I'll have it if it's necessary. That money is math and paper, and that there are lots of different currencies out there in the world where you can get things. And so I'm, as much as people might think that I'm absolutely loaded, I'm loaded in the area of love and satisfaction and spirituality. Do I have the multi-7-figure savings account? No way. And it probably has a lot to do with my attitude about money, because when I think about my parents got married extremely young. My mom was 19 and my dad was 23. They met in college. I was not planned. My mom had to drop out of college. And while my dad went to medical school on student loans, my mom worked nights for the IRS, as a 19-year-old with a newborn, and they had opposite schedules. And when my father was a surgical resident in Dayton, Ohio, we lived in the hospital public housing. And my mom worked full-time. And then when we moved to Muskegon, Michigan, they bought their first house. And I believe my dad at that point in time, I was in 4th grade when my parents were able to afford their first home. And yet there was never, I don't ever remember my parents talking about or complaining about money, ever. And then my dad continued with this practice, and they went on to buy a really nice house where they still live some 32 years later, and they did everything themselves. We were the kind of family growing up in the Midwest where we waited for everybody to come home from sports, or my dad from work, or my mom when she was working from her job, and we would have dinner at 8 o'clock at night if that's when everybody was home. And my parents lived on 2 acres, and it was all wooded, and they didn't hire anybody to get it done. My dad and mom cleared that puppy themselves. And to this day, they still do all their own gardening. Yeah. So I come from my dad's extremely successful as a physician. And my mom went on to own a retail store. But I never, ever, ever thought about or was concerned about money. It seemed like we always had what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't something super abundant about the way that we lived, but there was a tremendous level of satisfaction on digging in and doing things together. You know, come to think of it, Robyn, there is one thing that I do remember.
Yeah.
But it's from my grandmother.
Hmm.
So my mom's parents run a huge cattle farm in upstate New York. My grandfather's long since dead, and my grandmother, who's the matriarch of the family, is still alive at 94. And I'll never forget when I was in high school, she used to have this desk, right? And it was right when you walked in. It was where she did business. She'd pick up the phone, Beveridge Farms, you know, and you'd order your meat or order this or order that. She was like command central for the farm and for ordering and for business. And she had a drawer. And the drawer next to her chair, she would pull it open, and there was always like a stack of $100 bills in there.
Wow.
And she would, whenever we were leaving, because this was Buffalo, New York, and I grew up in Muskegon, so we saw them like twice a year. She'd call you, like me or my brother, over one at a time, and she'd like give us a big squeeze and, you know, a hug, and then she'd pull out $100 bill and she'd hand it, and she'd say, now don't you spend it, you put this away.
Yeah.
But she would always tell me, Mel, it's very important as a woman that you have your own money.
Mm.
You need to make your own money. And I never, ever, ever forgot that.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Interesting. So I mean, it sounds like your mentality now, which is very abundant, you know, even like you said, I might not have 7 figures sitting in the bank here, but you have this mentality of, you know, it's always going to work out. It comes, and it's not like you're sitting there in airy fairy land going like, money will come to me, I'll sit and do nothing, and I'm sure it will arrive. It's like you do what you want to do and follow your passion and work hard, and you just have a...
And look, you know, it wasn't always that way. Like, there was a period in my life where I just went to a job that I didn't like that much.
Right.
And I paid my bills. And my husband did the same thing. And we've been fortunate because we've had a very supportive marriage, but my husband's an entrepreneur, and so am I.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have the kind of business as an entrepreneur where you hit it frickin' big and you cash out in that business, or you just happen to have the kind of software business or product business or whatever that just takes off so you are flush, being an entrepreneur, and perhaps this is a story of mine, but being an entrepreneur, there comes a level of kind of financial out over the tips of your skis comfort level that comes with doing that for a living, because you are building something. And it's not about putting money in your pocket. It's about putting money into something so that it can grow. And Chris and I have both been in that that mindset for the last 8 years. He has been in the restaurant business with his best friend, building pizza restaurants throughout Boston. It sounds glamorous. It's not. There are restaurants that do great, restaurants that don't.
Right.
There have been like more times that I can count that payroll wasn't hit for him and his partner. There have been moments where I thought they were going to lose it all, and there have been moments of incredible victory. And so what's been interesting, though, is we have both recently made the decision that we're tired of being in that mindset, and that what we're both doing next is going to be about making a difference, being happy, and fucking making some money and sticking it away, and making some money and sticking it away, and making some money and sticking it away.
Nice.
Not because I feel like I have to have it. It's because it'd be interesting to me to live with a different mentality for a while.
Mm-hmm. And did you find, I mean, that's not what your parents did, or did they end up doing that in the end? Did they stick
Oh, they
it
do
away?
that, but they don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it?
No.
But they stuck it away?
Oh, yeah, they're fine. Hell, they're retired. They're sitting on the beach in Florida somewhere.
Nice. That's cool. Do you have any siblings at all?
I do. I have a younger brother who lives in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and has 2 young sons, and is married to an awesome lady who's a CFO for a big company.
Nice.
And they are like little mice. I mean, they're not little because my brother's 6'5" and she's 5'10", but you know, they are so smart about their money. They follow every single thing that you're supposed to do. I mean, just like they have plenty of money. Chris and I were like the crazy entrepreneurs that are flush this week and living on fumes next week.
Yeah. So did you notice any of that growing up, that your brother had different tendencies, like that he had a different personality around money, or did you find that that came later?
I think it came a little later. I just feel like money and money conversations were just never something that I was present to.
How many years apart are you? Is he a lot younger?
3.
Oh, just 3. Okay.
Yeah, and I was always like, I guess the one thing that I did take away is that I was raised by entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
My dad's parents were bakers. Had their own bakery. In Chatham, New Jersey. My other grandparents, my mom's parents, were cattle farmers and had a big cattle farm in upstate New York. My dad ran his own medical practice and had some other kind of medically related businesses, and my mother had a retail store. And so I grew up around a dining room table, both at my grandparents' house and with my parents, about owning a business, about working hard, about doing it yourself. And so I think, rather than money, what got infused in me is this idea of, you just go do your thing. And so as a kid, I had a paper out, I taught tennis lessons, I was babysitter. If I wanted something, man, I'd hustle for it.
Yeah. Did they do any allowance with you, or did they make you work, or did you decide? You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Did you decide to work because you wanted to buy things, or because they wouldn't buy things for you, or did they kind of push you, or at least encourage you to work?
They were just supportive of me. I wanted some money.
Yeah.
And but it's a totally different age,
yeah.
I believe. I mean, I've got 3 kids, 14, 13, and 8. And I wasn't hammering my mom every day to be able to download stuff on iTunes. Yeah. I wasn't aware, because I had an iPhone, of all the things that were now in the stores at the Gap that I might like. And so there's a very different level in terms of consumer awareness that kids have that we certainly didn't grow up with. I grew up in a tiny town in Muskegon. There wasn't anything to buy except for penny candy at Henry's grocery store.
Yeah, it is very different. It's changed a lot, and everything's just in your face. And
yes.
It started with commercials, and now it's like you don't even need commercials. It's just like every moment, every second. And,
yes.
And then I think that is what's coming now, or what's happening, I think, with kids, is a sense of entitlement, because everything's right then and there, and everything's so instantaneous that they think they should get everything at that moment. And, as you probably know, I mean, in regards to financial freedom, having money, financial security, all those things, a lot of the delayed gratification plays a role, being able to, wait for that. So do you do anything with your kids, or is there anything that you think you teach them that, again, that you kind of tell them or show them, or your behavior influences them in regards to money?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some things that I do that are positive, and probably some things that I do that are really negative. The positive things, although you'll have to tell me if this is positive or not.
I'm judging you as we speak.
Young age, I take my kids into the bank, and whenever I'm at the ATM and I have my kid with me, I try to both put money in and pull money out, because I want them to understand that this is not just some magic thing where you come up and hit a button, but that the ATM is holding my money. So it's like your piggy bank. You got to put stuff in there in order to be able to go to it and pull stuff out. And so that's one thing. My kids do not have bank accounts. Maybe they should. They don't get a consistent allowance. Maybe they should. They have a setup. We have a family kind of foundation that my husband's mom put together with all 9 grandkids, where at the holidays, depending upon their age, they get anywhere from $300 to $50. So, Oakley's 8, he'll get $50. And he has to take 20% of that money and stick it in the family charity, and the rest he gets to spend. And then through the course of the year, he does things to raise money for the family charity, and it's become like a vanity project where the cousins compete with one another to see who's going to raise the most.
Wow.
And then they get to pick where the money goes. Like what charity as a family the kids are going to support.
That's awesome. And who started that? Was that the grandma that gave you $100?
Yeah, the grandmother did it.
The same $100 grandma?
No, that one's my grandma.
Oh.
This is my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law.
Your mother-in-law does this. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's great. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's really cool. And so it's I find it very challenging to talk about money with the kids, and I suppose it's because Oakley's 8 and Kendall and Sawyer, our 14 and 13-year-old, are so busy with just life and school. And I expect them to keep their room clean. I expect them to help with dishes. I expect them to do their own laundry, and I'm not paying your ass for that. That is like part of living in this household.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of feel like with the way we've handled money, it's been based more on your attitude, what you're doing, the case you're making for why you need it. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I suppose on some level we're instilling in them this idea that if I need the money, it'll be there. Just like
Which I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think because there's so many different aspects that go into it, and what you're kind of talking about, I think, comes with like a bit of the abundance versus scarcity, and I think there's good and bad. There's always good and bad on both sides. I usually tell this example about how I read a menu from right to left, because I grew up and I would always look at the price first and then decide, okay, this is $8, $12, $15, $20. What can I get for $8? And then do I want that, or would I value, spending a few more bucks to get something else? So I always talk about that as kind of scarce in a lot of ways.
That's so interesting because, when I look at a wine list, I'm stupid. Because I'm like, oh, well, clearly the glass of wine that's $10 versus $6 is going to taste better.
Yeah, well, that's value.
So I have more of the abundance mindset.
But that's
dumb.
That's
I love
dumb,
a good bargain. I don't buy anything full price. Fuck that.
Yeah.
You can always get a deal.
Yeah.
Always. So I like that, but I do have this mindset like things that are expensive are better.
That's a very typical perceived value. I have that same perceived value, and I also am looking at like where can I get a deal, But I would say like for everything you look at, I think so much of it is being conscious of it. I talk about money parenting as being conscious of it, like noticing, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. For me, it was like, okay, I'm noticing that there's something about looking at the price first and deciding what I want. There's something scarce about that might, with that, I may pass on something to my kids that I do not want to instill in them. But at the same time, I love that I don't just throw money away at things I don't value, because I might not value that glass of wine for $10. Like, to me, it tastes the same.
Robyn, maybe you can lend some insight into this situation. Yeah. So I have a 14-year-old, and we happen to live in a very upscale area in Massachusetts, and it is the #1 public school district in Massachusetts. 99% of these kids go to 4-year colleges. I mean, it's just an awesome school system. But there's very, very wealthy people that live here. Yeah. And so I have got kids that are surrounded by other kids that have new MacBook Pros, that have new Uggs every year, that have this, that have that, that'll get a car when they're 16. And I was starting to say to my kids when Sawyer would say, well, why can't I? Why can't I get a MacBook Pro for Christmas? And I looked at her and I said, we can't afford it. And I said that a couple times, and my 13-year-old pulled me aside recently and said, Mom, when you tell me we can't afford these things, it makes me nervous.
Wow.
Do we have the money or do we not? And I said, well, let me put it to you this way. I could buy that for you, but it's actually not my priority. And it's not what I believe we should spend our money on.
Right. Which is actually the truth.
Yes.
I mean,
but I say it like I can't afford it because it's down here in the priority list, right? So it's here, and and I'm going to spend my money to here, and then I ain't got nothing left for this.
Right.
And then I also want to say to him, dude, I just paid for your freaking summer camp on the installment program, and it's November. So, chill out a little bit, because you want to go back there next summer.
Right. Well, I think what you're talking about in a lot of ways is the language, because it doesn't necessarily, mean it's not true, but it's like, I can't afford it. I mean, in a way, it is a lie. You can, because you could sell your house and you can buy a MacBook Pro. You can do a lot of things to be able to afford that MacBook Pro. And so, one thing that I work with parents a lot is about the language that they use, because that phrase is very common. We can't afford it. I can't afford it. And then when you start to what will be really interesting, or hopefully it won't happen, but what I've heard is the kids start to they'll start to regurgitate those same things. So you'll hear your kid say, I can't afford it, and all of a sudden you go, wait a second, I know, uh-oh, she got that from me. I had a client once tell me that they were in the car, their 5-year-old, all of a sudden out of nowhere goes, we're on a budget, we're on a budget, we're on a budget, or like just started saying these words like, or we're on a budget or something like that. And she was like, oh my gosh, I need to be conscious about what I say, because with language comes those beliefs, right? Because they'll start to say, I can't afford it. And then like you said, that's amazing that she actually, that was your daughter, right? That she actually told you that because she was having an emotional experience, emotional reaction to it, becoming nervous, which even though she may see abundance in your family life and that you look at things abundantly typically, if she heard that over and over again, she might develop this nervous like feeling towards money, and then her behavior, it's like a crazy 8, your beliefs plus your behaviors equals your bank account, right? So her behavior will now be shifted because of it. So I think it's just becoming conscious of those things and then choosing your language so that I always go for choice. So in that instance, when it comes with, your son, it was your son that asked for the MacBook Pro?
No, my 14-year-old daughter.
Your 14-year-old daughter. So I would say, that's something we can consider. Right now it seems like a better choice that we eat. What would you rather do? Eat. And I'm being extreme here, but there are realities that like we got to pay the mortgage, and you can have those conversations, especially at age 14 or whatever those priorities for you.
Right.
And then the last thing I would say, since you asked, is to give them a path to earn the right themselves. So if she really wanted that MacBook Pro, I would say let's figure out a way to make that happen. And you could maybe say, I'm not going to buy it for you for Christmas, but that's something you could earn. Is that something you really, really want? Let's say she says yes. So you can get her on a path to figure that out and help her start a business, car wash or whatever, similar things that you did to earn at least half of it, and maybe you can match it.
That's awesome.
And you don't have to match it, but you can,
That's awesome advice. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you want to, I got time for like one more question.
I would just say,
you and I could talk for hours.
No, I know. I was just looking at the time as well. So awesome. I would just, if you have any advice to parents out there, you can leave with your words of wisdom.
Listen to Robyn. That's what you should do. I'm not the money guru.
I didn't pay you for that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'm so happy to have you, on this, and I know people get a lot out of it. And thank you for being so honest. I mean, that's just, I know that's what you do and who you are. So just to be so honest, and everybody has, I do, and I teach it. I have my own beliefs about money as well that hold me back. Sometimes everybody does. We all do. So I would embrace the things you're great at and keep doing what you're doing. You're awesome. And thank you again for being on the interview.
You got it. Well, thanks for asking me, and thank you for all of that insight. I'm going to put it to use, Robyn.
All right. Thanks, Mel.
You got it, honey.